So today we're going to do a really basic introduction to a program called Adobe Bridge. Adobe Bridge is a file browser, but it's a file browser that's designed for photographers. So here's how it looks, a little BR right here. Once you have this opened up, it'll basically show you the last place you navigated to. So we'll just kind of go through some of the controls, how it works generally. Okay, so this little breadcrumb shortcut right here just shows you exactly where you are. This is also clickable. So if you want to kind of go back and navigate to previous things, you can kind of show up right here. Right under computer, you can either navigate by computer or by desktop. This shows you the things, the devices that are connected. We can also click on desktop and we can see some options here. So right now I'm going to go ahead and click on tutorials and I'm going to open up this one, demo images Adobe Bridge. So once I do that, it'll take a little minute to load. It will load basically whatever is in the contents of this file. So I basically have a little instructional thing right here, some of the things you should do, general bridge layout and tasks, open bridge, navigation, just to kind of as a little reminder of all the steps we're going to take. I have a truly random collection of images in here, just so you can kind of see generally how things look. So now you can see our little breadcrumb trail right here that shows where we are. So now we're under computer, Macintosh hard drive, we're on the desktop in a folder called tutorials, and this is the demo image Adobe Bridge folder. So this is useful because it shows you, where you are. If you're kind of going back and forth between folders, you just want to get in the habit of looking up here to kind of remember that. Now, there are a few different ways you can look through your images. Right now we're under the Essentials panel. There's also a Libraries one, which basically shows you a more intense navigational structure on the left with a bigger thumbnail on top and then a kind of scroll bar of images down below. You have Film Strip. This can be useful if you're going through images for the first time after you've downloaded them and you want to see just a bigger picture up on top. That can be a useful way of doing that. Output, this is more as you're getting ready to either, export your images in some other format or you make some sort of a proof sheet or something. This can be a way of doing that. And then metadata. Don't usually use this one. It just gives you kind of more information, file size, what kind of documents there are, etc. So generally you're going to want to be in the Essentials panel right here, which is the first one of these options. A few other things on top. This little arrow right here is the go back button. It just takes you back to wherever you were previously. So right now it just puts you back one step. It's clickable as many times as you want. So now we were in this folder, it goes back to the tutorials folder, and then we'll double click again to open it. This one right here reveals recent, something you've been looking at recently. This is return to the last application used. Generally, that's going to be probably Photoshop if you're working with this program. It's designed to be working back and forth with Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop. We'll go to this little button in a minute. This is the Refine option. I'll show you that in a little bit too. Okay, so that's sort of this little top panel right here. The very top menu items. So here we have some of the preferences for this program. There's some settings that you can adjust as needed. We have under the File menu, New Window, Close Window, etc. We can open the content of this with another software program if you want, or open Recent, anything you've been looking at recently. Return to last application is just another option of the shortcut you have right here. These get photos from camera. This is basically the same thing when you're downloading your photographs. You have the option of doing it right here, or you have the option of doing it through this little camera button. We'll be doing in another little demo. Okay, so selection, select all, deselect, etc. View, now these are kind of useful. So the views, there's a couple things. If you've been working with raw files, you'll also have what are called XMP files in here. If I go ahead and say show hidden folders, now I'll have these little XMP things that basically pop up. So anytime you've edited a raw file, this is going to basically show you the instructions I've created for this image. right, in a program like Adobe Camera Raw. So under View, that's there. We have some options for sorting. You can sort by file name, by date created, date modified. So you have a lot of ways of sorting these, or you can sort them manually. Stacks. So we're going to come to stacks again in a minute. Labeling is also important. There's a few options we have here for labeling, and there's going to be some keyboard shortcuts you're probably going to want to learn from that. As you do labeling, you'll notice the keyboard shortcut is shown on the side of right here. One of the benefits of this program is you can do star ratings. You'll see that a few things already have a star rating in here. So as you're going through these photographs, again, what you can do in this format, or you can go in the film strip, right? As I click through, it'll show me a larger version of this on top. So as you see a photograph that you want to work with, so say you see a photograph right here. Let's find one that's actually a photograph. This is a JPEG. Most of these are donated student work for this purpose. Okay, so we have this image right here. Maybe this is an image that you wanted to use for something. What you can do is you can give this a rating. So right here under label, maybe you love this photograph. You want to give it a 5-star rating. But you also notice this little 5 stars now appears right here. And under label right here, maybe you also want to change a little bit about it, but you don't have time to do it right now. So you might want to put a little note for yourself. Maybe I'll give it a to-do, right? And I'll put that in purple. That way this lets me know that I have a 5-star image that I liked. I don't have to go back and look at it again. And I gave it right now a to-do that showed me what to do. So let's do a few more of that. This is another example, right? So this one, this is a raw file. It's not positioned the correct way. We could do that now, just up here. We could do a quick rotation, but maybe we have more work we want to do on it. We probably want to edit out this thing on top. A little bit more editing to do. So maybe this one I would give a 4-star rating, and I would also give to do. All right, let's keep going through here. Okay, so we have these photographs of Joshua Tree. They're an okay start, right? But they need probably a little bit of work. So again, this one maybe I'll give a rating of a 3-star rating to, but I also want to remind myself to do something with it again. You can see this one has already been edited. I can see that it's already been edited because I have a little icon right on top right here that lets me know I've edited this image, or someone's edited this image already in Adobe Camera Raw. So I can see this one already has an edit, which, it's a DNG. So DNG files are kind of like the camera's native RAW format, only they kind of contain the little XMP file inside of them, right? So there it's part of the file that goes with it, as opposed to with these other forms of RAW files that we've been looking at. Let's see if I can quickly find one right here. Okay, so you have a CR2 file, this one .cr2 at the end. That lets me know this student image is shot with a Canon camera, right? So .cr2 or .cr3 are the indicators that this is a Canon RAW format image. So there's a few different ones in here. All right, we have a few more different file types. Got a couple of Sonys I think were also in here. Okay, so we've done a little bit of work on these images. We've assigned a few things. We have this JPEG right here. I think I'll do the same thing. Let's go to label. Let's give that one a 3-star rating. And maybe this one you want to just let yourself know, in addition to giving it a rating, maybe you've selected it already for something. Maybe for publication, maybe it's part of a portfolio. I'm going to go ahead and assign that this selection. Now, one thing you might have been noticing while I've been doing that is all of these little things under labels right here are going to appear on this side. These are actually really useful because there's a bunch of different ways you can look at the only photographs you wanted to look at. So I could say, okay, let's see, I have a couple different options here. I have 4- and 5-star images. Now I only want to look at those. Just go back to essentials to make that easier. So I only want to look at those, right? So I can go ahead and do that. And then I want to think, well, I only want to look at the ones that I have to do something with today. Okay, so that's showing me to do, and it's showing me things that are only 4 and 5 stars. So we can look at things that are no rating in addition to that. So the more kind of options you add on here, it's refining your what's showing in this window, right? So you're only having to look at the things that you want to see in here. Now, the real advantage of doing this that I've found is instead of making a bunch of subfolders, I've come to hate subfolders over the years, especially if you've been working and kind of maybe you make an edit to a photograph, you put it in a subfolder, you save it as something else. The benefit of working this way is you don't have to make a bunch of subfolders. You can organize all of your images under the same file that you downloaded them in, reorganize them whatever way that you like, and that's going to be much more useful for you. Okay, so we have a bunch of photographs also that are kind of similar, right? So these ones were all shot at the same time by the same camera. They're all the same format. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. I'm going to hold my shift button since they're all kind of together. And then I'm going to select this whole group of photographs that were similar and shot at the same time, right? Okay, so they're all selected right now. We can also do something called stacks. If I go to stacks right here, I can say group as stack, right? And now these images are gonna be in a little stack inside of the folder. If you were going to go ahead and open this in another software program, you wouldn't see the stack, right? The stack is just something that's happening within Adobe Bridge. But the useful thing here is instead of having a whole bunch of photos which are kind of cluttered up, you can kind of have all the photographs which are similar that you want to have kind of together, clumped together in a stack. And I can see that there's 10 photographs in this stack. I can press this little play button. It kind of walks through the stack, or I can move back and forth to see the photographs in that stack. If I click on it once, it just opens up the stack so I can see it, but it hasn't ungrouped it from the stack yet. I can click again and it will go back in the stack. Now, if you want to remove that from the stack, you could say stack and you can say ungroup from stack. It'll ungroup it from the stack. And now if I click anywhere, these photographs are no longer stacked together. They're ungrouped from the stack. So these again are some pretty basic ways of using this program to label your images, to give them ratings, to do something besides making subfolders to kind of help you look at how your images work. Now, right now we're on a TIFF folder. This TIFF, a TIFF image. This TIFF image has all the metadata intact. Notice under metadata right here, it shows you all the shooting data. It shows you all the information for this photograph. So under metadata on the side right here, this is incredibly useful. If it doesn't show up automatically, you're going to go to workspace and you want to make sure that you're in the correct workspace. If it's not showing up, you can also just make sure it's selected right here. So under window, again, just make sure all the things that you want are going to be here. Generally, I like to have metadata at the very least open so I can see all the camera data for my image. So I can see this image was shot at f8 using 1/20th shutter speed. I can see it's ISO 100. And then if I go ahead, if this camera data thing is closed, just open it up, right? It'll pop up here. I can see a little bit of information. This is a 36 megabyte file, right? I can see it's Photoshop processed this image previously as a TIFF file. Let's go down here. Exposure mode was auto. This is a 112 was the millimeter length that was used. This is a lens type that was used. This is the max aperture value of that lens. Here is when it was shot originally. The flash did not fire, and it was with a Canon EOS 5D. Here's the serial number of that camera and the lens, right? So there's really a lot of information that is stored with your image. If you also have GPS locations on for the camera, that will also show up here. So you can see a little GPS. That was not on for this camera, so it wasn't recorded, but if it was for the camera you were using, that will be recorded here as well. These were the camera raw settings applied to the image. You can see the white balance was as shot and the temperature that was here. The other thing is that DICOM, that isn't really something you'll need to be using. Video, it's not a video, so that's not going to be in here. Audio, don't worry about those two things. Mainly you're going to be looking at all the information that comes up under camera data right here. And this little mini window that shows you just, kind of a little snapshot of how the image was shot. I find this incredibly useful as a photographer and going through my images to kind of see how I shot the image, or when I'm looking at student work to see how the student shot the image. With raw files, that's always going to be recorded. Now, with your JPEG files that are created by your camera, it will also be recorded. But if you are shooting JPEGs with another type of software program, and you're creating JPEGs using different software programs, depending on your preferences and your settings when you are creating those JPEGs from the raw files, you can choose to have this metadata saved or stripped from the file. So for this course, I insist that you keep the metadata intact so we can see that and help for grading. Obviously, for the future, if you're putting your images online, you probably don't want this information recorded. But for now, for this course, it's very useful to have, and it's also very useful for us to see and critique how an image was shot. So for instance, if you're offering critique, you think, okay, this image has some things that are pretty useful here. Oh, one thing I didn't show you, you can go ahead and change the size of these windows if you want to see more or less information. So maybe here, if you want to see a little bit more information here, want to see this a little bit bigger, I can also press the space bar on my keyboard and that will make it bigger. I press the space bar again and it gets smaller. So as I'm looking at this image, I can say, okay, this was shot at f4.5, at 100 shutter speed. That's pretty good because there's not any motion blur that's going to be in here. It's mostly enough to freeze motion in this situation right here. Down here, this was shot on auto. I think a different setting might be better. There's some little underexposure in the foreground, so tilting the camera down and metering off of the jeans or something probably would have created a better exposure on a manual mode. And the focal length of the lens is 23 millimeters. I would say for this image, it probably would have been better. You can see there's some distortion that's happening around the edges right here of these lines. It probably would have been better to use a longer lens setting. That also would have allowed you to be a little bit closer to, a little further away from your subjects, which might have been more useful here as well. So a longer lens setting like 50 millimeters probably would have helped the situation a little bit. And that's something you can use when you're offering critique. Okay, so we have preview right here. Something else you can do here. As I'm zooming in, if I want to see, it looks like it's in focus, but I'm not sure. I could also click inside of this window, right? And I can move this around to give yourself an idea for if things are crisply focused or if there's high levels of noise. To see a little more closely, you can do that. And then you can do Command plus and Command minus to zoom in even more if that's something that you want to do. So click again to get rid of it. So anytime I'm in this little preview panel, I have the option of, clicking on one of my subjects or some part of the frame and seeing if the focus is useful here. Okay, a few other things. So for preview quality, I usually keep the preview at 100%. I find this useful because, then you're not going to be seeing things that are at a lower resolution than you should. So I always keep this pretty high. So standard is fine. You probably don't want to do fastest because sometimes it can give you a sense that your images are actually lower quality or less in focus than they actually are. So for preview generation, I usually do always generate 100% previews. It uses more memory, but it's useful in the long run because you generally want to see how your images actually look at full resolution. Other things here. So you could also, this is a little jump to filter thing here. You have the same options that you have right here, but it's just another way of doing that. And then of course the same sort by options you have on top are also through right here. And if you want to throw something away. At this point, I don't recommend doing it this way. I usually just keep the images in the folder. If they're terrible or something, you can start discarding them. But if you have the memory to do it, there's not really a reason not to. Okay, so some other things about the program, just really basically. So each of these windows are, of course, as I've been doing here, they're customizable. You can change the shape of them. You can also change the size of the thumbnails right here. So right here you can look, anywhere from larger to smaller thumbnails depending on what's the most advantageous for you. And under tools, we have a few things I also want to show you. So we have the original image here, we have the TIFF image here. So we have some tools right here. So you have some batch rename options. So if you didn't name the photograph right when you, if you didn't name the photograph when you downloaded it, that is something maybe you wanted to do later, or maybe you want to make an adjustment to it. So say let's just grab this group of images shot in Joshua Tree again. So under tools, we can do a batch rename, right? And so then we can, whatever you used last time will show up, right? So here, 2025, 0717, you can do it this way. You can rename in the same folder. You can rename and move it somewhere else. It'll just do the last one that you selected right here. So generally what I tend to do is I like to do first date time. So date time comes first, right? And I will do date created, and I will do, instead of month, day, year, I will do year, month, day. Why? Right? Because when you're looking through things, you don't want to see everything that was shot on the 14th of every month of every year. You want to see the year first, right? Things that are shot the most recently will show up. All the things shot in 2025 will show up together. All the things shot in, 2005 will show up together. You don't want those to be spread out in a folder. So I will do year, month, day first. Then I would do sequence number. Let's just start at 1. 3 digits is fine. So date, time, date created. And then you can also add something else here if you want to. I'm going to add one more, and I'm going to do text. And then maybe these ones, they were shot in Joshua Tree, it looks like. So I'll just put that here. And okay, that's the information I have, and I'll go ahead and say rename. And it will go ahead and rename those images in the same folder. Right, so now they're all renamed. So that's a pretty easy thing to do right here. Some of the other things you can do through here, we're going to work on these tools a little bit more later. One of them is, we talk about that metadata template, where you can create a template right here. Well, you create the metadata template by clicking here, and then you can call it something. So you can, usually it depends on what you're using it for. Maybe you're using these to post images online. Maybe you're using these for your portfolio. You can create a template or a few different templates for different situations. And then you can add all of these things right here. You can add contact information, your website, all of these things will then be applied to that image and show up in the data. So if I do that, right, it'll create information that will now be added to that file. So the next time somebody downloads that image and opens it up in a program like Adobe Bridge, they will then be able to see that once you create them. Okay, so hopefully at this point you have a pretty good understanding of, the basics here. We also have some information on the side right here that you can kind of go through here. There's also this thing called collections. So one of the useful things about Adobe Bridge is that you can also store things by collection. So you can create a number of different collections, and your same image can be stored in, in many, many different places. Now the advantage here is you're not technically moving this file from its folder. Say you had some other things, some other collections that you wanted to do. You can have this same image that appears in multiple collections without copying it or moving from its original folder. So this is basically just a way to source things. So say I have this selection of images right here. I can say under collections, there's this little plus on the bottom that says new collections. I will call this Joshua Tree. And these are okay. So now these are in this collection called Joshua Tree, right? I'm looking at the collection. Now again, they haven't actually been removed from the folder. And you think, oh, I don't want this one in here. I'm going to say remove from collection. Now I haven't actually deleted anything. This image is still in the original folder we had it in. It hasn't been moved. It hasn't been altered. It's just a way of viewing the same image in multiple places. The advantage here is if you start making edits to these photographs in a program like Photoshop or Bridge and then saving them, that the changes will save to the same folder, to the same image, without making a bunch of copies. That way it'll be updated in all the different collections that you have right here. Okay, so we looked at the filter, we looked at collections generally, and then we also have export. So there's a few different exports. You can do a custom export. I usually don't export things through this window. I'm going to do all of my work usually through another program like Adobe Camera Raw and do my exports through that panel. But if you're just making some quick work here, you can also create a little export that's going to apply to the photographs you've done, right? Again, not super useful, but it's something that you can do, and that's what this little panel here is giving us the options of doing. All right, so let's go ahead and go out of collections. Let's go through here. Let's look in a different folder. All right, so under desktop, I'm going to go now under tutorials. I want to go ahead and look. Let's go in this download demo right here. And let's look at some images that were in this one. So now I'm looking at these images. Now these obviously are not images of Joshua Tree, but just say that they were. And I wanted to include one in here. Right, so I think, oh, this is going to be perfect to add to that collection of images of Joshua Tree. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this image. And then I can just drag and drop it. And then that image will also appear in this collection, right? Pretty useful. So I'll just navigate backwards to go back where I was. Okay, so hopefully this is enough to kind of get you started through here. The next thing we're going to go over is this download button and how to use a download.